Yes. The second question, can the minister inform this House when will work on the synthetic track in Linden recommence and when will it conclude? When is it likely to conclude?
Honorable Minister.
Yes, I'm glad that the question was framed in that way because to answer the question comprehensively, I have to give some background and detail to when the work of the synthetic track had commenced, what got us to this point, and when we are going to be looking to conclude. So I have a number of publications from the DPI that I will be laying over with this House for reference. And just to go through this in a chronological way, so that the House, the public, Guyana is able to get a good sense of what transpired that got us to this point, and to show what a monumental failure the management of this project was. So I have on January 5th, 2018, caption says, synthetic tracks will be constructed by the end of 2018. This is Minister Norton. This is Minister George Norton. That important clarification, very important clarification must be made. Document number 2, May 12th, 2018, synthetic track, Linden synthetic track, on target for October 2018 completion. And just for the sake of being clinical, I must read the first paragraph, which says the Department of Sport is on target with its October 2018 deadline for the laying of a state-of-the-art synthetic track in the mining town of Linden in Region 10, Upper Demerara, Berbice. This is according to Minister of Social Cohesion with responsibility for sport, Dr. George Norton, who has responsibility for culture, youth, and sport. That's May 11th, 2018. October 26th, 2018, caption says, 320 million in contracts signed for Berbice and synthetic tracks. This is when the contracts are actually signed in October of 2018, keeping in mind that the original statements are saying that it would be concluded or on target for October 2018 for completion. October 26th, this is what was said. They've signed the contracts and that the works are scheduled to commence in 1 week at the date of signing, and that it will take 3 to 6 months to be completed. That's what they're on record as saying. In April of 2019, the caption in the Chronicle says, Minister Norton impressed with ongoing works at Linden synthetic track. Contract signed in October. This is April. So October, November, December, January, February, March, April. 6 months already passed. Contract is supposed to be completed within 3 to 6 months. And the caption says that the minister is impressed with the work that's going on there, even though it is not concluded. No, not yet. Not yet. This is June 30th, 2019, after the 6-month period had elapsed. Caption says, this is in the Guyana Times, caption says, Minister receives status update on synthetic tracks. Minister says that the construction is shaping up nicely, already 2 months behind, and it's shaping up nicely. September 5th, 2019, this is the Chronicle. Caption says, Linden synthetic track nearing completion. First paragraph. Very soon, athletes who are residing in the mining town of Linden will be able to practice and compete in a modern, state-of-the-art sporting facility, which boasts an 8-lane synthetic track. 2 paragraphs later, it says the actual laying of the synthetic material will be done by an overseas firm, and this is expected to commence at the end of September 2019. The contractor related that the work is moving apace and its completion is guaranteed before the end of the year. That's September 2019. By December 2019, caption says, DPI, December 5th, Region 6 and Region 10 synthetic tracks almost complete for 2020. Dr. George Norton gave the assurance in an exclusive DPI interview on Thursday where he said the following, and I quote, "We are certain that before the end of the year, of this year, that's 2019, we will reach a stage of the laying of asphalt so that come 2020, it would only need the accommodation of the synthetic materials and the laying of the synthetic material. And of course, the infrastructure surrounding those tracks." That was December 2019. None of that was completed. And here's the kicker. Here is the kicker, that they promised that the track would be completed by, first started by the end of 2018, then they said it would be assured that it would be completed by the end of 2019. Here's the kicker. They never even paid for the synthetic material. They never paid for the synthetic material. I have here, Mr. Speaker, the award coming from the Ministry of Finance, which says, and I would like to give the date of the award. Date 31st of May. 31st of May 2021. 2021. Please be advised that approval has been given for the contract synthetic material and installation of the synthetic tracks. Region number 6, New Amsterdam, and region number 10, Linden, awarded to Rugupal BSW for the tendered sum of 1.031 million euros. Who paid for this? The People's Progressive Party government. And just for the sake of clarity, let me also say that the government, the People's Progressive Party government, also had to complete a number of projects in order for us to get to the stage of laying of the asphalt, which was completed at the end of October, early November last year, which we completed with the supervision of BSW, where it was such a technical installation process that the margin of error was 5 millimeters. 5 millimeters. And it was scheduled for the laying, the completion of the laying, because we have in our possession, it's stored safely, the synthetic material. We already purchased it, we already received it, it's stored, it's waiting to be installed. And it was scheduled for November, December to complete the installation of the synthetic track, which is supposed to be no more than 30 days. But then the rain came early in November, and there was a curing period that was required for the asphalt to be cured, and we were unable to do it. It is scheduled, the other consultant has to come to supervise the laying of the synthetic material, and that's scheduled for April of this year. So once we don't have any weather conditions that would be disruptive during that period, the laying of the synthetic material will be completed. What I abhor to one of the worst things that, I don't want to say anything that is unparliamentary, Mr. Speaker, so I'm being very careful with what I'm saying. But what I consider to be repugnant is that members of the APNU AFC have been going around telling the country, holding press conferences, etc., and saying that this People's Progressive Party government had stopped the project, which was a complete falsehood. That was a complete falsehood. And they know better. They know better because if you examine the budget estimates 2020, 2021, and 2022, there are capital allocations for projects that needed to be concluded contained in there. For the projects that were started this year, forget about the projects that were concluded last year, forget about the purchase that we made that was included in our budget document, which is a public document, which we spoke about. Forget about that. Let's speak about what happened this year. The projects that started this year were all publicly advertised in the newspapers. In the newspapers. Members on the other side, including the leader of the opposition, went on a press conference and said that we were discriminating against the people of Linden by stopping the project. And that was a complete falsehood. Complete falsehood. What I want the people to know, and it's very important because you're going to have to go back to Linden and tell them that you failed them. The one project that you had been glowing and boasting about, it has been a monumental failure of project management, and there has been no consequences whatsoever for the people of Linden, those young kids who want to go and train there, none whatsoever. And there's... But they love the Lindeners. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. Honourable Member Ms. Halley, there was a question with respect to COVID relief for persons. There was a question, can the Minister inform this House whether his ministry provided any post-COVID relief?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I missed that one. Can the Minister inform this House whether his ministry provided any post-COVID material relief to the persons in the performing arts, specifically to return to theatre performance?
Honourable Minister.
Yes, the government of Guyana has provided a number of COVID relief measures and packages. There has been no specific industry that has received a specific measure of relief. It has been a general position of the government of Guyana.
Thank you, Honourable Minister.
Statements by ministers, including policy statements. Personal explanations. Requests for leave to move the adjournment of the National Assembly on definite matters of urgent public importance. Motions relating to the business or sittings of the National Assembly and moved by a minister. Introduction of bills.
Honourable Senior Minister in the Office of the President with responsibility for finance.
Thank you very much, Speaker. I present to this honourable House the Income Tax Amendment Bill 2023, Bill number 3 of 2023, a bill to amend the income tax to give legal effect to one of the measures announced in Budget 2023, which is free, sir, and I beg to move that the bill be read the first time.
Come to Amendment Bill 2023, number 23, business.
Remember, before we call the contributor today, as we proceed with the budget debate contributions for 2023, again, the ACIC, another barometer, Ms. Sarabo Hali already covered up. One of the reasons too that we have to keep the AC on, the control room has equipment that are temperature sensitive. So we're trying to get an isolated AC unit for that room so that we can shut down more often the AC in the dome so it wouldn't be this uncomfortable for people. Good. Also, I know many MPs may have guests and they may want to, during the break,
of the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization, which shows that 43% of Guyanese can't afford a healthy diet, while 5% are undernourished. This was reported in its recent report released in January of 2023, titled Regional Overview of 2022 Towards Improving Affordability and Healthy Diets. That report also states, Mr. Speaker, that 50% of the people living in our country live in poverty. They went on to specify that half of the country's population is surviving on less than US $5.05 or Guyana $1,000 per day. Mr. Speaker, it must be noted that with these facts about Guyana, the international organization said that our country's national poverty status is the highest among the Caribbean. Mr. Speaker, fix that and then come back to this August House and talk about biggest budget and budget for all people. Mr. Speaker, while this budget is some 41.4% larger than that of 2022, it is very clear that it will not be able to address the previously mentioned situations in Guyana, nor will it address the financial insufficiencies of the citizens. Mr. Speaker, this visionless government, while proposing to spend $781.9 billion, has failed to propose any measures that will indeed address the high inflation rate and general cost of living. Sir, this budget is deficient in a poverty reduction strategy, a crime prevention plan, and a permanent job creation strategy. Mr. Speaker, permit me to talk to you about public health in Region 5. Mr. Speaker, this budgetary allocation in 2 successive years continues to fail the people of Region 5, Mahaica-Borby, significantly, with some $236 million allocated to this region for health care in an oil-producing economy, a mere $17 million more than last year's allocation. Mr. Speaker, this government for years has failed to upgrade and build upon the work of the coalition government to transform the Trafalgar No. 28 health post into a recognized health center. This is a demonstration of the gross incompetence of this administration and the lack of vision for the region. Not forgetting, Mr. Speaker, the true uncaring nature of the PPPC government. Mr. Speaker, healthcare services should be the priority or primary focus, rather, of any government. But instead, this government is busy ensuring that our health sector is quickly privatized. Sir, the Constitution of Guyana dictates that every citizen has the right to free health services. Yet after the huge $500+ billion 2022 budget, citizens still have to purchase drugs, pay to seek medical services of specialist doctors, and yes, continue to foot the huge cost of having a life and death surgery completed. Mr. Speaker, our district hospitals in Region 5 continue to fail in their services to the people, with the X-ray unit down countless times in 1 year, the non-functioning ultrasound unit, shortages of drugs, especially for the elderly and children. The brand new one has not yet been installed, Mr. Speaker. Sir, even the dental unit was not working at Fort Wellington Hospital for a number of days until I spoke about it, Mr. Speaker. It is painful to hear the numerous complaints of residents who cannot access services at the medical laboratory at either Fort Wellington or the Maikoni hospitals. Mr. Speaker, it is always we can do this or we can do this one, but you have to go to the other hospital to get the next one done. So you find people living in Maikoni have to travel to Borbies for a simple test. Likewise, persons from Borbies have to travel to Maikoni. Mr. Speaker, Who will give our elderly who have to go monthly or twice monthly to the hospitals? The, 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 Mr. Speaker, who will give our elderly who have to go monthly or twice monthly to the money to travel when the meager pension is already consumed on utility bills, sir? The Honorable Member Jafar Ali won't be able to know about this, Mr. Speaker, because apparently he has the Blue Shield healthcare plan, and as a matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, he still doesn't live in the region. Mr. Speaker, permit me to remind this government of some of the things we called for as residents of the Mahaika-Borbis region in 2022 and still need. We need, Mr. Speaker, new ambulances, one to be added to those existing at both Fort Wellington and Myconi hospitals. I said this last year. In addition, 3 new ambulances which should be placed at health centers across the region at our far-flung and densely populated areas such as Rosignol, Bushlot, and Haidam in cases of emergencies, Mr. Speaker, and this is a proposal. We need, Mr. Speaker, a new state-of-the-art modern regional hospital to house all the necessary departments, sectors of healthcare services such as a functioning surgical theater, physiotherapy and radiology centers, maternity and pediatric wards, and a dialysis center. Sir, we need a fully equipped and functioning laboratory at both our hospitals. Mr. Speaker, our Amerindian brothers and sisters of Maracaibo still need a river ambulance to get them from 96 miles up the Myconi River to a hospital in cases of emergencies. Mr. Speaker, permit me to look at education in Region 5. Mr. Speaker, last year I denounced the meager increase of only $20 million added to the education delivery program for 2022 against that of 2021. However, this year is nothing better, with just a mere $22 million added, when this year's budget is over 40% of that of last year. Sir, while I believe that education is one of the main pillars for development in our society, this government and the regional administration do not believe it is. Mr. Speaker, if one child is deprived of education and a bright future, it is one too many. Sir, in the African community of Burma, particularly at Augsburg Primary School, the Honorable Jafar Ali would know about this, the children in that community continue to be deprived of their constitutional rights according to Article 27. That is proper educational facilities that is required for them to learn. Sir, the Augsburg Primary School is still without electricity since 2022. The roof is leaking as if it's a strainer. Sir, the regional administration continues to prove its incompetence and lack of ability to evenly distribute the nation's resources. In 2022, Mr. Speaker, this budget included a large portion of $101 million for the rehabilitation of the schools and living quarters, of which Augsburg Primary School living quarters were slated to be repaired. But to date, sir, that building remains in a state of disrepair and no housing is provided for the head teacher of that school. Mr. Speaker, this is the state of the living quarters of Augsburg Primary School. This is the State Minister of Education of the Augsburg Primary School living quarters, fully covered in bush, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, apart from that, there was a recent fire at the Numbed Primary School due to faulty electrical works. Yes, we speak about biggest budget. Mr. Speaker, there is a shortage of furniture, inclusive of teachers' desks and chairs, at several schools, including Fort Wellington Secondary, Number 8 Secondary, Rosignol Primary, among others throughout the region during the year 2022. This, Mr. Speaker, demonstrates this government's poor performance in management and gross incompetence. Mr. Speaker, when you examine the 2022 and 2023 capital project profile of education delivery, you would recognize, sir, that the classification is stated as critical. However, all these failures happened in a critical condition of our education sector. I wonder if the 2023 programs are truly critical or as the same as Augsburg Primary School. Mr. Speaker, the teachers and parents of region number 5 renewed a call for a separate building to house the number 8 primary school, nursery school, and remove the children that are cramped in the lower flat of the number 8 primary school. Mr. Speaker, this budget is vacuous, visionless, politicized, ethnicized, unfair, unethical, and benefits only the friends and elites of the PPPC to get rich and for some to get richer. Mr. Speaker, permit me to touch on public infrastructure, sea defense, and river defense. Mr. Speaker, the ordinary citizens are not mindful of the deteriorating relationship between the ministers of local government and the regional chairman of Region 5. However, sir, the effects of an unjustifiable original 2023 budget concerns them all, leaving them to suffer with little or no resources in some areas. Mr. Speaker, you would know, sir, that these proposed resources are to be spent in most areas in an unfair, ethnicized, and highly politicized manner, only catering for the communities and to benefit only the friends and families and elites of the PPPC in this much touted one Guyana. Mr. Speaker, this government returns to this House with a national budget. It failed to heed the cries of the ordinary citizens. Sir, there is a host of residents throughout the region who are suffering and need urgent repairs to be done to their streets and dams. Mr. Speaker, this government continues its rampant rage and discrimination against villages perceived to not be supporters of the PPPC government. And that's a fact, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me give you a summary of the discrimination of the Community Roads Program 2022. Sir, across 10 neighborhood democratic councils, this is the proposal of this apartheid, self-serving, racist, demonic regime. With 135 roads to be built, both asphaltic and concrete surfaces. This is the breakdown by communities, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in Blairmont, Gerland, NDC, where the PPPC controls, 9 roads are to be done out of a total of 135. In Rosignol, Zeelas, where the PPP controls, 21 roads are to be done out of 135. Mr. Speaker, in Blairmont Woodlands, Bel Air Woodlands, where the APNU AFC controls, 15 roads are to be done, Mr. Speaker. But it would appear as though, Mr. Speaker, only 1 village is in this entire NDC, because 10 roads, Mr. Speaker, will be done in number 7 village alone, where the Minister of Local Government is from, Mr. Speaker, and the NDC is left with only 4 roads for the other villages. Mr. Speaker, surprising enough, in Bath Woodley Park, NDC, out of a total of 135 roads, 31 roads will be done in Bath alone, Mr. Speaker. 1 community, 31 roads, Mr. Speaker. In Union, Narstigide, Mr. Speaker, where the APNU AFC controls and has about 14 villages, Mr. Speaker. 25 roads will be done. That is good, Mr. Speaker. 25 roads. However, Mr. Speaker, out of those 25 roads, 23 will be done in 1 village called Bushlot, Mr. Speaker. And the Honorable Jaffer Ali would know that Bushlot is a strong base of the PPPC, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, one road will be done in Hope Town and one road will be done in Trafalgar. Mr. Speaker, every time you come to this house and you speak about the racism and the discrimination against our people, they call you a racist. But Mr. Speaker, I will remain a racist once I'm defending the people of Guyana. As long as I'm dealing with the affairs of the people of Guyana, Mr. Speaker, I will be called a racist, and I have no problem with that, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in Tempe Seafield, 6 roads will be done where the AP and UFC control. In Prophet Rising Sun, Mr. Speaker, where Belladrum and El Dorado falls, only 4 roads out of 135 will be done, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, in Myconia Barry, where the PPPC controls, Mr. Speaker, 9 roads will be done. Mr. Speaker, surprisingly, in Hamlet Chance, where the AP and UAFC controls, with 1 PPP village, Mr. Speaker, 1 road will be done, and that road will be done, Mr. Speaker, guess where? In the village of the PPPC. Mr. Speaker, in Woodlands Farm, NDC, Mr. Speaker, where the AP and UAFC control, and we control a total of 6 NDCs in Region 5, Mr. Speaker, 14 roads will be done, sir. And out of the 14 roads, Mr. Speaker, 13 of those roads will be done in the village of the regional chairman controlled by the PPPC, Mr. Speaker. That is discrimination, Mr. Speaker. That is apartheid chip, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, permit me to speak about agriculture and food security. Mr. Speaker, under this sector, I was left spellbound and speechless during the already terrifying and scary almost 6 hours of presentation by the Honorable Senior Minister in the office of the President with responsibility for finance. When he said, and I quote from page 28, paragraph 4.33, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Member, I see the Honorable Minister of Home Affairs has his light on. Honorable Minister of Home Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, on a point of clarification.
Honorable Member, on that point of clarification, there's that particular standing order. I have to seek the Speaker on the floor position.
No, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister said when we took office in 2020, the agriculture sector was in a state of collapse as it had become a target for political vindictiveness, having been starved of financial support and subjected to particularly poor planning. Sir, the minister went on to say in his budget speech, this is tragic since agriculture is an important pillar in our non-oil economy and has been the base of economic activity, especially in rural communities, for decades. Mr. Speaker, I, like many Guyanese, find this statement laughable, since we all know this minister throughout his almost 6 hours of vacuous presentation found himself in the opposite corner of truth, like the rice, second paddy drying floor still to be completed in region number 5 from since 2022, and the incomplete state-of-the-art abattoir at Unfawak that is presently at foundation stage of construction, although funded started since the year 2020. Mr. Speaker, this is the state of an abattoir that was funded since 2020. Mr. Speaker, only 2 days ago, the foundation is still being dug, Mr. Speaker. This is the rate of completion. This is the fast rate of completion that the Honorable Minister of Finance speaks about when he comes to this house. And after 3 years of spending, Mr. Speaker, this abattoir is still at foundation state, Mr. Speaker. Kudos to the PPPC government, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if the Honorable Minister wants to talk about collapse, I will direct him to his government's 2022 mid-year report. That, Mr. Speaker, is a total collapse. Mr. Speaker, when sugar declines by 55.9%, in 1 year after an already reduced target. That is collapse, Mr. Speaker. When rice declines by over 22.4% with no adverse weather conditions, that is collapse, Mr. Speaker. When fisheries and aquaculture decline by 19% in the same year, that is collapse, Mr. Speaker. When livestock and meat production declines despite a growing demand for animal source food products, both locally and internationally, that is collapse, Mr. Speaker. When other crops, value crops, coconuts, corn, soybeans still can't move past the phase of studies and diversification, designs and theories after billions of dollars being invested, Mr. Speaker, that is a collapse. Mr. Speaker, when Gaisuko through this government spends over $150 million on 8 non-functional cane loaders, machines placed at Albion and Blaymont Estates, and after 2 months, not one piece of cane could be picked up by these 8 non-functional machines. Mr. Speaker, that is tragic. That is a collapse, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when this government can collect an entire flock of malnourished and in some cases barren black belly sheep and boast about this, Mr. Speaker, that is a collapse. Sir, when the PPPC government, after investing over $40 billion of taxpayers' money into Gaisuko and can reopen one estate, Mr. Speaker, that is collapse. When sugar, Mr. Speaker, when Gaisuko, after reducing its production target over 97,000 metric tons of sugar in 2019 to a mere 57.
Honorable Member, the Honorable Minister of Agriculture is rising on a point of order.
Mr. Speaker, a point of order, Section 40. The honorable member is impeding improper motive in saying that Gaisuko would have purchased 8 cane grabber, which is not true. And I ask that you apologize and withdraw that statement.
Honorable Member, the Honorable Minister is saying the information provided is not accurate. What we will do is to establish the accuracy of that. So I'm going to ask the clerk to pull up the exact words that you said and ask the minister to provide the contrary information. Go ahead now, Honorable.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, and I can provide the photos of those cane loaders. Mr. Speaker, when Gaisuko, after reducing its production target from over 97,000 metric tons, Mr. Speaker, of sugar in 2019 to a mere 57 metric tons of sugar in 2022 and still fail miserably to make a single crops target, sir, must I say to the Honorable Minister, that is what defines a collapse, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, how dare the Honorable Minister come to this House to tell us about collapsing any sector in this economy when instead, Mr. Speaker, it was this Honorable Minister through his government in 2015 who left an entirely collapsing economy, Mr. Speaker, for the APNU AFC coalition to revive, Mr. Speaker, and revive is what the APNU coalition did, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the APNU government left a thriving agricultural sector in 2020. Today, sir, we see a steady decline in this sector under the hands of a PPPC government. This, Mr. Speaker, contributes to the rapid rise in cost of living, Mr. Speaker, in the sense that we are producing far less than we were 3 years ago and importing far more. Mr. Speaker, don't be bothered by the noise, Mr. Speaker. The proof, Mr. Speaker, is evident in the statistics of the 2022 mid-year report, which shows that most subsectors in the year 2022 declined, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me help them to understand their government's performance. Mr. Speaker, sugar declined. Mr. Speaker, rice declined. Fisheries and aquaculture declined. Small and other crops declined. Corn and soybean declined. Mr. Speaker, this is tragic, and this is what we call a total collapse. Mr. Speaker, while while this government proudly boasts about the $4 billion allocation to Gaisuko to commence the construction of the Albion packaging plant, sir, the real argument is whether Gaisuko needs a multi-million-dollar packaging plant. Sir, Gaisuko is failing day after day, crop after crop, to produce enough sugar to be processed and packaged at its Blaymont Central factory location. Sir, I ask the Honorable Minister of Agriculture, with sugar dying, Mr. Speaker. Sir, I ask the Honorable Minister of Agriculture, with sugar dying under his watch, is this feasible for Gaisuko, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, the rice sector in 2019, according to the Guyana Rice Development Board statistics, show that Guyana produced 1,049,874 metric tons of paddy, making it the second highest rice producing achievement in Guyana's history. While region number 5 alone, Mr. Speaker, produced 454,476 metric tons of paddy, with a rice equivalent, Mr. Speaker, of 295,409 metric tons. This, Mr. Speaker, was the region's second best performance, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, today the rice production is at its lowest. Mr. Speaker, I repeat, today rice production is at its lowest or its worst performance ever, with the rice sector contracting significantly since 2019. However, Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Minister comes and stands here in this Honorable House and tries to mislead the nation as if all things are bright and beautiful.
You can say the honor impute that he's tried to mislead. You have to withdraw that.
Guided, Mr. Speaker. As if all things are bright and beautiful with the rice sector. In fact, sir, the rice sector has contracted by some 22.4%, after being projected to grow by this government by 25.1%. The reality being, sir, that rice underperformed at a rate of 47.5% in the year 2022. Mr. Speaker, that is a collapse, that is a tragedy, and that speaks of a collapse in this economy. Mr. Speaker, I challenge the Honorable Minister of Finance and Agriculture to go now, and perhaps I can go with them, Mr. Speaker, and they would see that hundreds of acres of rice land have been abandoned for over 2 crops now, Mr. Speaker. Sir, rice lands in region 5 and 6, Mr. Speaker, are left uncultivated because of the high cost of living, cost of production. Mr. Speaker, the prices for fertilizers and other chemicals have all skyrocketed. Yet in budget 2023, there is no measure to cushion this, Mr. Speaker, and to assist the hundreds of rice farmers to return to the fields of their daily living. How heartless and cruel this is to our farmers, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Minister lamented that his government distributed $900 million in fertilizers. But, Mr. Speaker, he did not remember to report that probably all the fertilizers were spoiled and melted. Mr. Speaker, if he didn't remember, Mr. Speaker, he can ask the Honorable Vice.
Honorable Minister, use microphone. I'm not hearing you. Your own members are not paying you the courtesy of allowing me to hear you.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, standing order 40 again, the honorable member is misleading this honorable house. In region 5, we have distributed...
Honorable Minister, you're standing on... You want to provide contrary information. And I have to get the honorable member to give you leave to make that point.
No,
so you have an opportunity. You have an opportunity to present.
You're lying in this house. You're lying. You come in lying here.
Lying, misleading again, honorable members on parliamentary. Honorable member, before we recommence, honorable member, Mr. Viceroy, I will have to get an extension for you. I did provide you with the extra time that you were interrupted. Honorable Member Ms. Ali.
Mr. Speaker, I beg that my honorable member be given almost 10 minutes, but we will stick with 5 to conclude his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. You may proceed to conclude in 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, continuing, maybe he didn't ask the Honorable Vice President what the people in Region 6 said to him, sir, or perhaps he didn't ask the Honorable Member Jafar Ali about the one man who collected all the fertilizers in Bushlot and went to the masjid and distributed same when half of the village was left.
Honorable Member, you may want to withdraw that, because I am sure our masjids don't get involved in what you're trying to impede.
Mr. Speaker, so do. Went to a special place, Mr. Speaker, and distributed the same when half of the village was left at war for not receiving any. Mr. Speaker, while I don't doubt the Honorable Minister that perhaps $900 million was spent on fertilizer, I certainly doubt that 5,160 farmers did receive, as was stated by the Minister. And if the Honorable Minister wants to prove otherwise, I challenge him, Mr. Speaker, to produce the list of those farmers and the quantity that they all received, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, loud shouts and long speeches with no proof of accountability is not accepted in this House, Mr. Speaker. It is unacceptable, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I challenge the Honorable Minister to show us, Mr. Speaker, to show us the farmers that received in Belgium and Ithaca in Region 5. Show us the farmers that received in Firish and Lancaster in Region 6. Show us the farmers that received in Dartmouth and Queenstown in Region 2, Mr. Speaker. And when he does, I will personally apologize, Mr. Speaker. It is high time we expose these facts of racism, nepotism, cronyism, and friendism of this uncaring cabal called a government. Mr. Speaker, with all that being said, let me remind the Honorable Minister of some of the thriving achievements in the area of agriculture that his government inherited. Mr. Speaker, improved drainage and irrigation systems across the length and breadth of the rice belt. The coalition did it. Mr. Speaker, since 2015, the NDI has installed pumps at stations across Region 5, Region 3, Region 4, Region 5, and 6, Mr. Speaker. Several pump stations have been built and rehabilitated across the coastline at a cost of over $3 billion, Mr. Speaker. The areas benefiting from this project, and listen, Minister of Agriculture, Honorable Member, the areas benefited from this investment includes Luzignan, BV Triumph, Good Hope and its environs, Friendship, Buxton, or Stelling, Mocha, Providence, Hope, and then more in Region 4, Three Friends and Columbia, Mr. Speaker, Aberdeen, Land of Plenty, Mainstay, Lima, and Reliance in Region 2, Mr. Speaker, Bengal, Gangaram, Eversham, and Joppa in Region 6, Mr. Speaker. A new sluice was built at the Edward Village, West Coast Berbice, to improve drainage. Mr. Speaker, the coalition did that. Mr. Speaker, the introduction of a high-yielding paddy to the farming market, it was the coalition that did that, Mr. Speaker. The introduction of new varieties of fruits, such as citrus, Mr. Speaker, that the Honorable Minister can now come and include in his budget. It is the coalition that did that, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it was the coalition of the APNU AFC government that introduced the Rural Agricultural Infrastructure and Development Program called RAID, Mr. Speaker, with funding from the Caribbean Development Bank to the tune of $318 million. Mr. Speaker, in the communities of Ithaca, Mocha, Monrepo, and Buxton, benefiting hundreds of single parents, cash crop, small and medium-sized farmers who now have cultivation lands and machines with the requisite infrastructure to continue a daily living. And on this point, Mr. Speaker, I say to this uncaring government, return the machines that belong to Ithaca, return the excavators, return the graders, because it belongs to the people. Mr. Speaker, the National Drainage and Irrigation Authority Commission, listen to this, Mr. Speaker, the first amphibious excavator on May 20 24, 2019, the coalition did that. In the GLDA Commission, Mr. Speaker, Guyana's forest duck egg hatchery, producing approximately 850 ducklings on a hatching day. The coalition did that. The year 2017 saw the introduction of the black giant birds to the Guyana market through the Hinterland Development Program, with the handing over of 100 black giant chickens, along with the requisite startup feed and other supplies to Madia Secondary School in Region 8. Mr. Speaker,
remember, I've been signaling you to conclude, but you've been ignoring me.
Mr. Speaker, a minute to wrap up.
No, sir. You're already a minute over the 5 minutes. So you wrap up now.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, I therefore propose to this government to give unto every Guyanese what is due to them. Proverbs 29, 1 and 2 says, "He that being often reproved and hardeneth his neck shall suddenly be destroyed, and that without remedy. When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. But when the wicked beareth rule, the people mourn." Our people are mourning, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Budget 2023 is heartless, visionless, and mean, and I cannot support this budget. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Next presenter is the Honorable Member and Minister of Public Works, the Honorable Bishop Juan Edgehill, starting at 11:21.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise as part of Team PPPC to support a strategic, purpose-driven, and well-orchestrated budget to continue to promote Guyana's development, bring about transformation, modernization, and prosperity for all the people of Guyana. Mr. Speaker, I'd be very concerned that NCN and DPI did not broadcast such a presentation, because that is helpful to the PPPC. That is to indicate why the APNU AFC must never, ever get back into office. That kind of presentation. But, Mr. Speaker, I would like to congratulate you and the Parliament, because I'm aware that everything that is said in this House is publicly displayed for all to see. And I'm sure the DPI and NCN is also broadcasting, because these kinds of presentations, which can be fact-checked, where the people of Region 5 could stand up and say, he's not telling the truth, I live there. Where the people of Region 5 will be able to say, you're talking about Travalca Health Center, we know a new hospital is being built there. Where the people who listen to the call out of roads will be able to tell you, we know where roads were built. We live on the roads where they are built. So, thank you very much, Honorable Member, for helping the PPPC to advance its cause. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, something has been happening in this House over the last couple of days, and people have been repeating about this report released in January 2023. But, Mr. Speaker, this report was studies and research done during 2019 into 2020, during the COVID years, where people were not able to work, where they had a lockdown. Yes, it was released in 2023, but the studies were for a period when the APNU AFC held the reins of office. Mr. Speaker, I would like to bring to your attention, and Mr. Speaker, we have the report about what was taking place in Guyana during the period 1990 to 1992. I'm trying to find it back. Where the percentage of people that were undernourished and the rest of it was over 22%. By the time we got it down to 11% by 2011. That is the fact, written and published. And I could send a copy of that for you, Mr. Speaker. But I'm sure you're fully aware of it. And here it is that we're having people coming to peddle narratives, big tent behavior again. Big tent behavior. I will not play a colored girl in the ring. So we will have to continually, we will have to continually be addressing these inaccuracies and misconceptions. But Mr. Speaker, because these debates are going live and people are continuing to listen to this narrative that Guyana is an apartheid, racist, demonic regime. Mr. Speaker, apartheid could only exist, number one, when you have a party that is all of one race. Number two, apartheid could only exist where one race is subservient to another race. Number three, apartheid could only exist when there are legal boundaries where one race cannot go and where one race cannot go. And we are allowing in this house people to say that a government, look at this side of the house. Does this look like a party? But you know what is the problem, sir? It's reverse racism that is at work. Because if you're Afro-Guyanese and you don't follow the narrative of the PNC, you're not black. But I would like to remind this house, nobody have a transport on Bishop 1, Anthony Edgehill, or any other Afro-Guyanese that support the PPPC. In apartheid, sir, some people can't vote while others vote. They weren't allowed to vote. So, I'll dismiss that for now. But Mr. Speaker, while I go through my presentation, I will take the opportunity to answer some of the other things that were being said. But I would like to start here, sir. I hold in my hands the extract from the People's Progressive Party Civic Manifesto, Infrastructure Boom, Building for the Future. Mr. Speaker, and the reason why I'm going here is because I would like to indicate to you and to the entire nation that what Dr. Ashley Singh brought to this house stands true and faithful to the social contract we made with the people of Guyana when we went to the polls, and we are fulfilling our mandate. Budget 2023, which I am being told by my colleagues in the opposition is heavy on infrastructure. Well, I've been hearing two things. We got to make up our mind which one is true. Now, all two is coming from that side of the house. The budget got slush funds to look after people that are with the PPPC. And then we hear that the budget only billing for one set of people. Well, we got to decide. We got to decide. And Mr. Speaker, let me just remind, we came to office on August 2nd, 2020, 28 months ago. And I will examine in detail what the 56 months of the APNU AFC looked like. So I will start. Mr. Speaker, in 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020, 56 months of the APNU AFC rule, the total appropriation for miscellaneous roads that Mr. Jordan just complained about was $8,522,000,000 for 56 months. All the roads that Mr. Jordan is complaining that he didn't, that needs to be fixed, the honorable member, that he's complaining that needs to be fixed, they had 56 months to do it. And they didn't do it. In the 28 months that the PPPC is in office, 2020, 21, and 22, we have already allocated and implemented $45 billion worth of work in miscellaneous roads. In 56 months, $8 billion. That was the lethargic, do-little state of the APNU AFC. I am happy to tell you, Mr. Speaker, that we closed 2022 where our capital budget was concerned at 89% and our current budget at 99.9%. Mr. Speaker, in the overall roads program, which included miscellaneous roads, main access roads, hinterland roads, farm-to-market roads, in the 56 months that the APNU AFC was in office, they appropriated and spent $52 billion. 52 billion. 52 billion in 56 months. The same people who are complaining about roads needs to be fixed, roads needs to be fixed, road needs to be fixed. In 28 months, the PPPC has appropriated and expended $83.9 billion. Mr. Speaker, while I'm hearing the heckling, it's the same engineers, it's the same people that was there for 56 months, are there for 28 months, but they are delivering. You know why? Because they have visionary leadership. They are delivering because they understand where Guyana needs to go. They understand that there's a government that is looking after people and not looking after themselves. That is the difference. Mr. Speaker, Budget 2023 makes allocations for about $136 billion that will be spent on roads and bridges. But Mr. Speaker, while I seek to tell you what we will do with the monies that have been appropriated, let me tell you about our scorecard of what has transpired. Since we are in office, in 2020, when we came into office between October when we had a budget to December, we did 4 coastal bridges. In 2021, we did 14 coastal bridges, moving them from wood to concrete. In 2022, Mr. Speaker, we completed 13 coastal bridges. 45 hinterland bridges are currently under construction, moving from wood to concrete, being built to international standards. And Mr. Speaker, we have maintained more than 40 other bridges. In terms of miscellaneous roads, in 2020, we did 80 kilometers of community roads, miscellaneous roads. In 2021, we built 117 kilometers. In 2022, we built 290 kilometers of community roads. That's what this PPPC did. Mr. Speaker, in terms of urban roads and drainage, in 2020, the 3 months that we came in, we did 6.37 kilometers. In 2021, we continued our program with 3.6 kilometers. In 2022, we built 18.13 kilometers of roads in the city and in the towns, urban centers. Mr. Speaker, I would not do justice to my team at the Ministry of Public Works if I did not say congratulations to our Special Projects Unit. In 2020, in our maintenance of roads program, we did 175 kilometers of road. In 2021, we did 420 kilometers. In 2022, we did 520 kilometers. Are you seeing the magnitude of what is taking place as it relates to Guyana's development? In terms of rehabilitation of main access roads, we did 6 kilometers in 2020. In 2021, we did 15 kilometers. In 2022, we did 23 kilometers. Mr. Speaker, and I have a report card for Mr. Ronald Cox, who sought to chastise the Ministry of Public Works concerning Region 1. I will come to what we did in Region 1 just now. But in terms of hinterland roads, in terms of concrete roads, in 2020 we did 1.5 kilometers. Asphaltic roads, 1 kilometer. Laterite roads, 21 kilometers. And maintenance work on 180 kilometers. That's from October to December. In 2021, in terms of concrete roads, we did 1 kilometer. Asphaltic roads, 1 kilometer. Laterite roads, 145 kilometers. And maintenance work on 400 kilometers. In 2022, in terms of concrete roads, we did 4 kilometers. Asphaltic roads, 9 kilometers. Laterite roads, 90 kilometers. And maintenance, 340 kilometers. That's what we did in the hinterland communities. As it relates to sea and river defenses, sir, which I'm hearing a lot of buzz about we're not protecting the sea and all the rest, the country from the sea. In terms of construction, we did 5.4 kilometers of work in 2022. We rehabilitated 1 kilometer, and we maintain 81.8 kilometers of our sea and river defenses. That's what we've been doing. As it relates to our hinterland airstrips, we have been maintaining and bringing improvement, and you will see when I come to what we'll be doing in 2023. Mr. Speaker, just a few days ago, last week, Friday I think it was, I was in Blackbush Polder. And I'm pleased to announce to you, sir, that since we came to office, we have already did rehabilitation to 10 kilometers of the Blackbush Polder Road. 10 kilometers. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Member, Mr. Cox, said that two roads, some Barbino Swamp Road and the road to Wangna, is not done. The fact of the matter is, sir, these are roads under construction. These are roads under construction. But I hold in my hands a report card that cannot be matched by anything that the APNU did in their 56 months. 23 projects in all of Region 1, which includes Wangna and the Barbino Swamp Road, totaling $1.7 billion of works in Region 1. That is the reality. Mr. Speaker, this year, because of our track record of implementation and getting things done, I'm humbled that the Ministry of Finance was able to make the representation to Cabinet to approve that the Ministry of Public Works would receive a total of $158.2 billion to execute works, both capital and current expenditure. And I would like to express my gratitude to my longtime colleague and friend, Dr. Ashley Kumar Singh, for his partnership. And I would also like to express to the team at the Ministry of Finance our deep gratitude and appreciation on behalf of the team at the Ministry of Public Works for working with us to ensure that Guyana's development and transformation and modernization is not stymied, but rather accelerated. Somebody, well, we mash brakes, but we mashing the accelerator. We know which pedal to put our foot on. We mashing the accelerator because the people of Guyana are impatient. They want development. They want development. They want Guyana to modernize, and that's what we are doing, and we will deliver for them. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Public Works have a number of agencies that are part of our team. When we came to government, sir, the Transport and Harbors Department was one of the departments that was struggling. Let me explain, Mr. Speaker. For the period 2015 to 2020, no NIS contributions were made for the staff of the Transport and Harbors Department. I am pleased to announce to you today, Mr. Speaker, that the arrears of $470 million have been paid off, and any staff at Transport and Harbors Department could now get their benefits. And that's what the PPPC has done for the people of Guyana. Mr. Speaker, not only was NIS not remitted, not even the Union Jews, that was deducted was paid to the Union. Mr. Speaker, we are pleased to announce that all the arrears of Union Jews have been paid up and we are now out of the red. Mr. Speaker, I would also like to indicate that while PAYE was deducted, it was not paid over to GRA. I'm happy to announce that we've been paying the backlog. We are current and up to date, and the people of the Transport and Harbours Department could now get their records in order. That is what we've been doing. But, Mr. Speaker, the success story of the Transport and Harbours Department don't stop there. We have dry docked every single vessel and rehabilitated them, things that were not done for years. The Kanawan, the Sabanto, the Kimbio, the Makaura, the Malali. Mr. Speaker, you are aware that we have instituted an additional trip on a daily basis to the Perico-Supanam route. So we are now making more trips between Perico and Supanam. And we got a miracle. We have burned less than 80,000 gallons less in fuel. How could you be operating a boat, more trips, and less fuel? So the hustle of the fuel hustlers have come to an end. Mr. Speaker, we have instituted ferry pass. So the long lines, the alleged corruption that took place, but who could get on first and who could get on second, has all now come to an end. People could book online and they could get to their destination knowing that they could get there and come back.
Honorable member, I've been cautioning about corruption every day, and this is the first time. Please take that one out.
I'm so guided, sir. My apologies.
Because it's an acknowledgement that there's corruption in Perico. But go ahead.
I'm so guided, sir. Mr. Speaker, in 2022, we have moved 440,754 passengers, an increase of 28.74%. Mr. Speaker, we have moved 102,634 vehicles, an improvement of 1.79%. We have moved 218,892 tons of cargo, an increase over 2021 of 30.7%. Mr. Speaker, we are happy to announce and let the House know that the MV Melissa has already departed Kolkata. It's on a submersible barge en route to Port of Spain, where she will sail into Port Georgetown in the first quarter of 2023. Mr. Speaker, the Maritime Administration Department, which is the regulatory body and has been tasked with bringing about improvements and even making interventions as it relates to our new oil and gas sector, which largely exists more than 270 kilometers offshore Guyana. Mr. Speaker, we have continued to establish safety and navigational aids in all of the rivers of Guyana. Quite recently, we signed a contract for the removal of 17 wrecks in our various rivers so as to ensure safety while trafficking. People are traversing these rivers. Mr. Speaker, we have expended another $293 million to effect the docking and rehabilitation of the administration vessels, the Seamang, the dumb barge, the split barge, the hopper barge, and the pilot boats, M.L. Thompson and M.L. David P. I showed these in the house, David P. And the acquisition of spares. This year, MARAD will continue to promote its safety and navigational programs. One of the things that MARAD has done that I'm sure even members of the opposition will be pleased about, is the initiative we have purchased and distributed life jackets to people in the riverine communities, all of the operators of the boats and their sailors, because we want safety on our waterways. We did not just depend upon the operators that you buy. We took the initiative. We bought and we distributed. Mr. Speaker, the Guyana Civil Aviation Authority continues to recover from the COVID period, and they have been doing exceptionally well, both as it relates to the air navigational services, as well as facilitating and licensing new aircraft and new airlines into Guyana. For the people of Guyana, I would like to report to you that as it relates to domestic flights out of Ogle, we have climbed to 15,553. Sorry, sir. Domestic freight has climbed to 15,553 metric tons, and it grew by 51%. Overall international passenger movement, a total of 710,564 international passengers were transported through both of the countries' international airports, Eugene Coray International Airport, as well as the Cheddi Jagan International Airport. We continue to move more people, and we continue to move more cargo. The air navigational services, we provided to 74,453 aircraft during the period January to December 2022.
Introducing period reminds me that your time is up and you need an extension, Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to ask that my honorable colleague be given time to conclude his presentation.
Thank you, Honorable Minister Teixeira. Honorable Minister Edgell, you have 5 minutes to continue and wrap up.
Thank you very much, sir. Sir, as it relates to the Cheddi Jagan International Airport, you'll recall that Guyana was among the first to reopen its international airport in the period of COVID, and without any regret, we were able to do well, and we have seen phenomenal growth. There were 4,141 international landings in 2022, an increase of 34% over 2021. We had 3,094, we moved from 3,094 jet landings to 4,144, and that was mainly due to additional flights from Fly Always, Caribbean, inter-Caribbean flights, additional airlines that started operating. We were able to put on additional seats amounted to 1,093,994 compared to 624,152 for the period 2021. So the amount of seats available grew, and this represented a 75% increase. The Cherry Jagan International Airport continues to manage well financially. They've closed the year with a surplus of about $1.7 billion. New airlines are servicing, sir, and I guess if everyone opened the newspapers of today, coincidentally, they have seen that the modern new air bridges that could now accommodate both Code D and Code E type aircrafts are on the front page of two dailies today. And that means that we are ready for flights like the British Airways, which will be operating in the first quarter of this year. Guyana National Shipping Corporation, sir, continues to do well. And I must indicate, sir, that through the National Shipping Corporation, they have seen 7,120 vehicles come through that port alone during the year 2022. An average of 791 vehicles for average, because this is over a 9-month period since they were able to engage this contract. We're continuing to work with them. Cement, stone, fertilizers, things that are needed for Guyana's development. That facility continues to provide service. The government's electrical inspectorate continues to provide service to the people of Guyana. And last year, they inspected some 8,441 new circuits and meters, whether for temporary works or for household use. And this is a good indication of what is happening in the housing sector and in the commercial sector, the demand that is taking place. Mr. Speaker, allow me my last few minutes to talk about the major projects that are taking place, of which Budget 2023 will finance. A new office complex for government offices with the possibility of accommodating some 6,000 workers, consolidating government offices into one place to ensure we deliver great efficiency and moving away from the multiple buildings that have to be maintained and some rented to bring about greater levels of efficiency. Mr. Speaker, you are aware that we are advancing that 2.8 kilometers of that 4-lane high-span concrete bridge across the Demerara River. That contract is advancing. Mr. Speaker, the construction of the 4-lane highway along the railway embankment starting at David Street all the way into Orange Nassau, and the development of the continuation of the East Coast Road from Belfield to Orange Nassau is catered for in Budget 2023. With the coming of the new ferry, MV Melissa, we have started the construction of 2 new wharves, one at Kingston and one at Port Kaituma, to be able to adequately cater for the roll-on, roll-off type nature of this ferry. And further will have to be advanced at Mabaruma as well as Marawana. Mr. Speaker, the Linden-Mabura Road is in swing. I recall standing in this house and criticizing this while we were in opposition, that we left this project. And every time this project came up for discussion in a budget debate, it was just about 2 jobs, the consultants. I'm happy to announce that currently, the last report as of January 20th, 144 Guyanese are employed working on the Linden-Mabura Road. There's a mobilization of more than 176 pieces of equipment that is actively engaged in that road. Mr. Speaker, I would like to assure the people of Guyana that Team PPPC, under the guidance of His Excellency Dr. Mohammed Irfan Ali and the other cabinet, guiding the Ministry of Public Works, we will continue to do all that is necessary for the modernization, transformation, and development of Guyana. And our commitment, sir, is to serve all the people without discrimination. We will not be manipulated by criticisms to give preferential treatment to prove any point to anyone. We will continue to work with our objective criteria in ensuring that in the delivery of services, people who never had, people who never benefit, and people who didn't benefit will now begin to benefit first while we bring benefit to all the people of Guyana. I thank you, and I pray that we will have a successful year 2023. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister Edgehill. And now for the Honorable Member, Mr. Senior Counsel, Mr. Roysdale Ford.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today cognizant of the expectation on our shoulders from those who sent us to this honorable house to represent their interests and ensure that as Guyanese, that they all can benefit from the nation coffers based on need and the creation of opportunities, utilizing the principles of equity and equality. We may be on opposite sides of the house, Mr. Speaker, because of who elected us as their representatives, but I can assure you that the ordinary Guyanese, represented on both sides of the house, desire to be an equal part of society and benefit likewise. This is not only a task, but a responsibility which we must deliver without fear, favor, or ill will. Mr. Speaker, today I rise to do this in earnest and due diligence, because a country this wealthy has no excuse not to deliver in equal measures to all the people. The budget is serious business. It ensconces the financial management of the country for 2023 and what measures or lack thereof government has provided as a pathway or a hindrance, particularly for the ordinary Guyanese man who rely on us to create opportunities for them to thrive. We are reminded by Derek Hamilton, Professor of Economics and Urban Policy, that there are other ways, and I quote, to define economic value and traditional measures have not captured what is first and foremost our most treasured asset in the world, which is people. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, critical examination, assessment, and dissection of this budget in relation to the rights, needs, and welfare of all Guyanese are imperative before arriving at a decision whether this budget is national or partisan. Mr. Speaker, some 43 years ago, the nation transitioned from a constitution given to us by our former colonial master to a constitution which was indigenous and reflective of the aspirations, hopes, and ideals of all the Guyanese people. Indeed, we would recall that no one other than Dr. Cheddi Jagan himself declared that he found nothing really wrong with the 1980 Constitution. Articles 24, 26, and 27, for example, confer the right of free medical attention and social care in the case of old age and infirmity, free education from nursery to university, and the right to proper housing accommodation. Mr. Speaker, the constitutional commitment to social and economic rights, as stated in the aforementioned articles of the Constitution, were never intended to be barren, sterile, or arid legal provisions. They were meant to be state obligations which underpin the nation of Guyana. In 2016, Mr. Speaker, the Partnership for National Unity signed the oil production sharing agreement to ensure and guarantee a prosperous and stable economic future for all the Guyanese people. Despite the PPP much maligning the oil production agreement, it is the basis of the economic growth that the PPP now seeks to falsely claim as its own and is now grossly mismanaging. What is really owned by the PPPC, Mr. Speaker, is a grave deterioration in the quality of life of most Guyanese, increased poverty, increased hunger, low wages, high crime, ever-increasing unemployment, especially among the youth, low pension, malnutrition, and little or no meaningful attention to the elderly, aged, and infirm. However, Mr. Speaker, the PPP budgets certainly have one thing in common. That is the failure to introduce a vision and a plan for all Guyanese consistent with our motto of one people, one nation, one destiny. Mr. Speaker, they expose the ugly underbelly of structural discrimination, evident in the growing income gap between the haves and the have-nots. The few beneficiaries of the PPPC's One Guyana and the vast majority of Guyanese. The economic decay is reflective of the decay in the quality of citizens' legal rights and their opportunities to access for their own economic empowerment. It remains today, Mr. Speaker, relevant as stated by Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham in his speech, A Vision of the Cooperative Republic, that this nation must be cognizant, and I quote, of social needs and wants in creating a just society for the people of Guyana, end of quote. He stated also, Mr. Speaker, that a just society cannot be achieved unless the majority of people, the masses, the little men, have a full share in the ownership and control of the economy. Mr. Speaker, apart from the PPPC's One Guyana, the majority of the people, the masses, the little men and women have not benefited from the oil economy, nor have they seen their quality of life positively impacted. Since 2020, the economy has grown. It has grown, Mr. Speaker, 43.5%, 20.1%, 62.3%, and projected to grow in 2023 some 25.2%. But it's amazing, Mr. Speaker, that the Honorable Minister has been unable to point to any ownership by the little men and women and their families in the ownership and control of the economy. We call upon this government, Your Honor, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that the government provide mechanisms for ordinary Guyanese to own and control the economy. The stable inflation rates from 2016 to 2020, despite high levels of economic growth under our side of this Honorable House, saw greater spending power of the Guyanese people, greater rates of saving, and lowering of poverty. To this, the nation owes and holds gratitude to the prudential stewardship of the former Minister of Finance, Winston Jordan, President David Granger, Prime Minister Nagamutu, and the ministers of that government. Mr. Speaker, inflation has rapidly increased under the PPPC from 2020 to 21 when compared with the APNU's period of governance. In 2016 to 2020, inflation was 1.4%, 1.5%, 1.6%, 2.1%, and 0.9% respectively. During the PPPC's period, Mr. Speaker, it's recorded as 5.79 and 9.4 in 2021 and 2022 respectively, and is expected to be 3.8% in 2023. Mr. Speaker, the high inflation and high prices are wreaking havoc in this country, and this government must bear full and accept full responsibility for this. The PPP budget offers no prospects for equitable economic and social transformation, which is now more necessary than ever for the people to prosper in an economy identified as the world's fastest growing. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Minister, in his budget presentation, omitted to provide us with any information on the human development of the Guyanese people. I submit that the deteriorating quality of life of most Guyanese since 2020, the minister thought it prudent in this oil-rich economy to hide the facts. But facts are stubborn and cannot be hidden. Mr. Speaker, you would have heard how perturbed they are when we mention the Food and Agricultural Organization report. They want to say that it's a report done during the period of the APNU AFC. But Mr. Speaker, what cannot be denied is that for the last 31 years of government in this country, these fellows over there have been in government for 26 years. The problem is their failure to effectively...
You know better. These fellas over there.
Sorry, Your Honor. These honorable fellows, Your Honor. These honorable members have been unable to effectively deal with the issues, Your Honor. That is why, Mr. Speaker, the report says that around 43% of the Guyanese, 43% of Guyana's population cannot afford a healthy diet. Mr. Speaker, they may not like it,
But this is the fruits of their governance for 26 of the last 31 years. Mr. Speaker, this certainly isn't the quality of life any caring government would desire for people or flippantly speak about. Guyana, the PPP is spending billions on infrastructure and has forgotten our struggling working class, single parents, youth, ordinary families, farmers, fisher folk, the elderly, our brothers and sisters in the indigenous communities. Our people are suffering under the heavy rising cost of living caused by this government with their poor fiscal policies, tearing into every pot and pan of every Guyanese home across the country. This government has become disconnected from suffering families, and this can be seen in the more than 100-fold increase in prices for the period January to December 2022. Ordinary items, Mr. Speaker. Cabbage has increased by 130%, pumpkin by 185%, edibles by 150%, eggs by 82%, borers by 183%, pak choy by 166%. This is what the Guyanese people are facing. The facts, Mr. Speaker, the prices of basic commodities have increased at a pace that now outstrips income of any sort, whether salary, whether wages, whether pensions. Social and economic equalities are increasing for the vast majority of Guyanese, yet the budget has failed to address these. This must be a source of shame on the president, it must be a source of shame on the finance ministry, and certainly a source of shame on the government. What the honorable minister has failed to address also in the budget is Guyana's score on the Human Capital Index, which reveals some frightening matters, Mr. Speaker. It discloses that 97% of our children survive to age 5. Increasing levels of non-communicable disease contribute to only 79% of our 18-year-olds potentially surviving to age 60, with only 3/4 of our 15-year-old boys reaching 60. You would agree, Mr. Speaker, these are disturbing statistics. The health and longevity of our people are critical for the nation's development. Likewise, the survival of both sexes to ensure procreation, family stability, and growth. 12% of our children under 5 suffer from chronic malnutrition, twice the rate in the interior of Guyana. The maternal mortality rate is now 229 per 100,000 live births, one of the highest rates in the region. The healthcare professional to population ratio is 31 physicians and nurses to 10,000 of our population. Suicide rates continue to be high, with Guyana still having one of the highest rates in the Caribbean, 30.2 suicides per 100,000 persons. We on this side of the House believe that the government must increase in real time and real terms allocations to education and health, and these must be directed to the quality delivery of necessary resources, training, and recruiting competent personnel. Mr. Speaker, the recent announcement by the government that it is against the cash transfer because it cannot afford it has no basis in evidence other than the partisan desire to keep the poor, vulnerable persons from benefiting from our oil wealth, therefore increasing the poverty gap. Cash transfers must not only be paid to the poor and vulnerable based on needs, but to every household as recommended by Guyana's and the regional's premier labor economist, Professor Clive Thomas. The PPP, despite rapidly worsening the economic circumstances in Guyana since 2020, decrease in poverty, and the abundance of oil resources, have failed to expand and overhaul the social safety net. The government must at once provide unemployment grants, establish a social safety net that addresses the circumstances of young children, young persons, elders, and women in our society. Mr. Speaker, among the travesties still occurring in Guyana is the persistent failure by the government to make wages and salaries livable and to respect the constitutional right to collective bargaining for all unionized workers in the public service, or where the government is a shareholder. I believe this government must act now and move to the bargaining table with the trade unions to achieve increased wages and salaries and improve conditions of work reflective of an oil and gas economy. The government has failed to deliver on its elections campaign's promise of a 50% increase to all public servants
after more than 2 years in government. Unilaterally tossing less than 20% increase in wages and salaries to public servants in 3 years is as discriminatory as it can get. In 2020, public servants received nothing. In 2021, they were tossed a 7% taxable increase, and in 2022, an 8% taxable increase. This is unacceptable. What is needed for the small man in this country, Mr. Speaker, is a helping hand up, not the government's boot on his neck. Mr. Speaker, when the government boasts of development to the people, this development is meaningless if it is not accessible to our people. In instances where the government is seeking to establish housing development, citizens are being asked to pay exorbitant sums of money on unlivable wages and salaries. The locations of these areas are far removed from persons' workplaces and their children's schools. Persons also can't get to locations where these houses are going up neither because they cannot afford to purchase a car. It is a situation of one step forward and many steps backward. The situation will get worse if we do not value the importance of progressive infrastructural development and building communities which are accompanied by the requisite amenities and services. And even though we are seeking to break free of poverty by the seemingly supportive opportunities that exist, they remain shackled by policies that do not empower them either. Mr. Speaker, I believe that we can afford to build quality houses for the ordinary Guyanese man and woman. The construction of these must come from small contractors, primarily the marginalized communities of our society. This is a plan that will give the small man an opportunity to escape poverty. The government is also facilitating the massive transfer of state wealth and awarding huge contracts to the identified one Guyana. Flagrant disregard for the public sector workers and the vulnerable in our midst continues despite evidence of the vast economic disparities and the repeated advice to pursue political inclusion and shared prosperity. Even the Joe Biden administration had urged this government to act responsibly. In the world's fastest growing economy, the government ignores that 49% of the people are living in poverty. 48% of the population is existing on less than 1,200 Guyana dollars a day. And it is in this Guyana that pensioners are expected to survive on $33,000 per month with today's cost of living. These groups, which represent the majority of Guyana, get no direct benefit from living in the fastest or the fifth fastest growing, depending on what the president says, economy. Only the one Guyana, that special one Guyana, is benefiting from this growth. Mr. Speaker, this budget is anti-family. It has given the small man nothing, nothing to survive on, nothing to live on, nothing to hope for. As families are stretching themselves thin on small incomes, the government has been withdrawing billions from the Natural Resource Fund. But these sums have had no direct impact on the ordinary lives of the people. 3 times last year, the government dipped into the fund. In May, for $200 million was withdrawn. In July, another $200 million, and this month, $207.6 million. In 2022, Guyana earned more than $1 billion in oil and gas revenue, more than $150 million in royalty, and the economy grew by more than 60%. By no stretch of the imagination, Mr. Speaker, is Guyana a poor country, but yet poverty is pervasive with a widening economic disparity and government indifference. My fellow Guyanese, we would like the government to address its mind, assuming it has a mind and a heart, to the philosophical underpinning of Aristotle's theory, and I quote, "Poverty is the parent of revolution and crime." Aristotle is referenced, Mr. Speaker, merely to direct attention to the causative effects of deprivation and what we must do as representatives of our people to address this. The reappearance of street executioners and extrajudicial killings are symptomatic of the social decay and the return of the breakdown in law and order. Mr. Speaker, these indicators do not augur well for the stability of our people and our beloved country, Guyana. 2 days before the budget presentation, Guyanese were shocked at the news of the gunning down of Delon Josiah at his home, in his bedroom, at Perseverance on the east bank of Demerara. Days earlier, Anthony Charles, called Skiddy, of Leopold Street, was gunned down in broad daylight. This assembly, This assembly cannot ignore these untoward happenings in our streets, either by rogue officers and or by civilians, threatening the safety and security of us all. It is not the national development, Mr. Speaker, when the PPP continues to ensure that significant and transformative projects are only landed in their geopolitical strongholds, a continuation of what continued and obtained during the previous terms in office. Guyanese are aware that the hospitality training complex is identified for Port Moran, the gas to shore at Wales, the packaging plant in Edmore, and the list goes on and on. There will be no similar economic transformational projects, as far as we know, slated anywhere near communities represented and dominated by supporters of the opposition. This is the president's one Guyana, and this should certainly offend our sense of national consciousness. The largest budget in the history of the nation deliberately avoids meaningful funding to the predominantly black civil service and discipline services. I can say more, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the attention is now going to be directed to the travesty in Caneview, Mocha, in which the police was used by the executive of this country to prevent their fellow Guyanese from protecting their homestead and belongings. It's beside the point, Mr. Speaker, whether they were asked to remove or offered support to move. Mr. Speaker, will the other side of this assembly initiate this very public policy to clear the Grove to Diamond East Bank reserves, which will ease traffic congestion in the East Bank corridor? This legislature, this lawmaking branch of this government, in which sits the executive members, knows that homeowners, be they described as squatters or otherwise, have rights. No government should demolish persons' homes and properties without engagement, providing them with comparative opportunities for relocation and securing their hard-earned possessions and investments. Mr. Speaker, the United Nations Commission on Human Rights, the Subcommission on Prevention of Discrimination and the Protection of Minorities report illuminated the 12 misconceptions and misunderstandings of the right to housing. The report dispelled the notion of squatters being criminals and unworthy of meaningful engagement and respect. Indeed, our Constitution, Article 154 of the Constitution, demands and calls upon every state organization to respect the rights arising under international treaties. Lest it be forgotten, we were elected here to represent our people, and this representation must be to the benefit of all the Guyanese people. The PPP continues in this regard to fall woefully short. The government's inattentiveness to the people is also reflected in its treatment of the judiciary. Not only has President Irfan Ali failed to respond to the Honorable Leader of the Opposition's, Mr. Aubrey Norton's letter agreeing to the substantive appointments of Mrs. Janet Cummings Edwards and Mrs. Roxanne George Wiltshire Senior Counsel as Chancellor and Chief Justice respectfully, consistent with Article 127 of our Constitution, he has failed to ensure that the judiciary has been conferred with the required human resources to dispense justice in a timely manner. Initiation by the President of the required consultation with the Leader of the Opposition for the appointment of confirmed officers must happen forthwith. Mr. Speaker, the judiciary demands immediate attention, and I believe the dilly-dallying must end. The situation is dire, and the government's dereliction of duty was politely addressed by the acting Chancellor, Justice Cummings Edwards, when she said, and I quote, "We need more judges. We need the Judicial Service Commission to be established ASAP as soon as possible. We are facing increased caseloads. Judges are now overburdened. They are exhausted. They are nearly worn out, and they are in some cases burned out," end of quote. Undoubtedly, Justice Cummings felt compelled to remind the executive, and I quote again, "We do not need a rhetoric. We need more laborers. We need the judges. We've been hearing time and time again about the JSC soon to be established. We would like to see the implementation and the establishment of the Judicial Service Commission." Mr. Speaker, as an officer of the court and a member of this House, and my fellow colleague, Honorable Member Anil Nandalal, Senior Counsel, he ought to be advised, and I do advise him, to render proper advice to the President, to ensure that the executive honors its obligations to the judicature. All are aware that justice delayed is denied, and the morale of the members of the judiciary is tied to the employment stability and the proper conditions under which they dispense justice. Mr. Speaker, a review of the budget disclosed that all the essential characteristics of the Dutch disease, it certainly discloses it, Mr. Speaker. None other than Mr. Geoffrey de Silva, a PPPC comrade, has waved the red flag in our faces. He identifies the manifestation of the Dutch disease in four spheres. These are the political, financial, economic, and social. The characteristics are its political instability and increase into ethnic rivalry. National institutions are weak, ineffectual, and corrupt. The people have less say in government. The government is overdependent on oil income for its revenues. There's unrestrained public spending. Crude oil are a very large part of the exports. There's little economic diversification, and the competitiveness of the non-oil sectors, including agriculture and manufacturing, is declining. All types of crime are increasing. Professionals are paid low salaries compared to foreign professionals. The education system produces the wrong graduates, and it is tailored to bureaucracy instead of productive sectors. There's a brain drain, and there's no limit on the foreign number of employees in the country. Political office holders are paid highly, while workers and farmers earn relatively low income. These are the views of their own Geoffrey de Silva. That is exactly the situation in Guyana, Mr. Speaker. The pages in this budget reveal that government's overdependence on oil income, and there's no restraint in public spending. Mr. Speaker, we heard from the Minister of Finance that the major non-oil sectors of the economy are indeed declining. Mr. Speaker, we heard and the country heard from the Honorable Minister that crime is increasing. Guyana is now ranked at level 3 by the USA Travel Advisory, which is a message to avoid traveling to Guyana due to the increase of crime. A recent survey indicated Guyanese prefer to migrate than rather to stay here in Guyana. It is my view, Mr. Speaker, we can prevent the ravages of the Dutch disease, but the socio-economic process must change from exclusion to inclusion. This could be sensibly done through Article 13 of the Constitution, which provides the basis for inclusive governance, shared prosperity, peace, and social cohesion. Before I take my leave, Mr. Speaker, it's timely, I believe, to remind this House that Premier Forbes Burnham in 1964 said, all the people of this country are important, whether they belong to a large group or a small group. The Amerindians are important, the Chinese are important, the Portuguese are important, the Europeans are important, the mixed races are important, the Africans are important, the Indians are important. In short, all Guyanese are important and valued members of our community. We cherish them and consider them, and it is the duty and privilege of government to guard and protect and further the real interests of all. These words, Mr. Speaker, articulate the desire of every Guyanese, and they were more evident on the 26th of May when the then Minority Leader Dr. Chetty Jagan and Prime Minister Forbes Burnham embraced as a Guyana, embraced a new nation to lay the indigenous foundation of inclusivity, equality, and equity. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, following members of this House, Honorable House, it's being proposed that we do the honorable thing and scrap this budget. Together, along with the national stakeholders, let us conceptualize a vision for all Guyana and put a spending plan in place to reflect all Guyana, not one Guyana, and return to this honorable House to unanimously approve a national budget that secures the rights and interests and prosperity of all Guyana. I'm sure my colleagues on this side of the House and those on the government side who believe that all Guyanese are important will not oppose a national vision, a national economic plan that is inclusive, which would give hope to all Guyana and the aspirational flame of our founding fathers and mothers for one people, one nation, one destiny. It remains as bright today as it was the dawn of independence. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member, Mr. Ford. And completing the morning or the pre-lunch presentations is the Honorable Minister of Agriculture, the Honorable Zulfikar Mustafa. Minister, you may proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I rise to support my colleague and brother with responsibility for finance, the senior minister, and his team for the formulation of a budget that is transformative, dynamic, and comprehensive. Mr. Speaker, this budget will address the socio-economic transformation of our country and continue to fortify the government's One Guyana vision. Mr. Speaker, what was presented by my colleague, Honorable Minister of Finance, is concrete evidence that our government's policy is forward-looking. Mr. Speaker, there can be no doubt that Guyana is positively transforming at breathtaking pace. This rapid development is outpacing our brothers and sisters in the region in some Caribbean countries. As a matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, we have been ranked the second fastest growing economy even without oil in the world. Mr. Speaker, this country is in the international spotlight for good reason and is much sought after investment destination, a far cry from just 2.5 years ago under the coalition when it was classified as a place of doom, gloom, hopelessness, and its people devoid of confidence. Mr. Speaker, this transformation that we are witnessing didn't happen by magic. It took visionary leadership of the People's Progressive Party civic government and the prudent management of the country's resources to make it happen. Mr. Speaker, it took that visionary approach to craft budgets since taking office in 2020 to realize and sustain this unprecedented development. Budgets are the fiscal means to deliver this transformative development for the benefit of all Guyanese. Mr. Speaker, budgets are a means of us delivering on our promises, and we on this side, on the House, are delivering on promises that we went to the Guyanese people with. But Budget 2023 ensures that we will continue to deliver on those promises that we have made. Mr. Speaker, we have witnessed a number of events in our country's history. Since we took government in 2020, we have seen a number of events that took place in our country. And let us imagine for one moment, Mr. Speaker, if the APNU AFC was in office during this time, what would have happened to Guyanese and Guyana? The entire country would have been in serious consequences. But today, Mr. Speaker, when we speak today, the region listens. We have brought back credibility, and we are now leading agriculture in the Caribbean. The entire Caribbean are looking forward to the leadership of His Excellency President Dr. Mohamed Irfan Ali. And Mr. Speaker, with that portfolio that our President holds, we have seen a renewed interest in agriculture in the Caribbean. Countries that solely depend on tourism are now moving to transform their economy into the agriculture sector because they see the future in agriculture. We have seen what took place during the last 2.5 years, during the pandemic. We have seen many countries that have large sums of money were unable to procure food for the population. And we in Guyana here are very fortunate because with the prudent management with the investment that we have created, we have invested, we are able to produce 60% of the food that we are consuming. And Mr. Speaker, I am hearing that my colleagues over there are saying 100%. We will reach there. And when in my speech, I will let them know how we'll be going there, because I have a plan, unlike them. I have a plan for the agriculture sector. And Mr. Speaker, they could beat their breath. They could beat their breath, they could beat their chest. But let us don't deny the fact that the non-oil economy performed credibly excellent by performing 11.5% in the GDP. And in that, agriculture contributed almost 9% to our GDP. So they can come with all kinds of statements. They can come with all kinds of untruth. They could come with all kinds of misinformation. That doesn't deny the fact that our country economic growth, especially in the agriculture sector, was excellent. Mr. Speaker, as I said, we have seen the energetic leadership on the regional front by our president. We are seeing that our president is leading the charge to reduce the food import bill of CARICOM by 25% in 2025. Guyana was the first country in CARICOM that hosted a successful agri-investment and expo last year, May. And with that, we have seen many investors and financiers coming to Guyana to invest in the agriculture sector. Mr. Speaker, the special ministerial task force that was set up by the heads of government, who is leading that? Yours truly is the chair of the ministerial task force of CARICOM. Guyana is leading that. Guyana is leading that charge. That showed how the CARICOM countries are looking to Guyana. That shows the confidence that Guyana now is experiencing, Guyana now is enjoying by our CARICOM brothers and sisters. Mr. Speaker, I might have to change my prepared speech because of certain misinformation that was brought to this House. And yesterday, Mr. Speaker, we heard the honorable member, as a matter of fact, the first day of the budget speech, I heard the honorable member, Ms. Amanza Walter Desir, said that we have destroyed the sugar industry. She doesn't know about sugar. Probably she knows about sugar to drink in her coffee or tea. The honorable member, Kemraj Ramjatan, said we destroy the sugar industry. And that has been the mantra of the APNU AFC. Mr. Speaker, when you look at what took place under the APNU AFC, when you look at Ramjatan's right size, what are you talking about, honorable member? Mr. Speaker, he seems to have some problems. He seems to have some problems with I will get the facts just now. I will have the facts. But Mr. Speaker, Mr. Ramjatan went to WIM. Honorable member, Mr. Ramjatan went to the WIM rally, told the sugar workers there that the sugar industry is ingrained in Berbice economy, that the sugar industry is important for Region 6. As a result of that, they will not close any in any factory, and they will increase the workers' salary by 20%. That is the minister, or Mr. Ramjatan said. Mr. Speaker, As I said, we have seen what happened and who destroyed this industry. Mr. Speaker, I want to say in 2014, listen to this, in 2014, when we left government, Gaisuco was producing 216,352 metric tons.
Honorable member, just give me a moment. Honorable members, we had 3 presentations that everyone gave a certain modicum of respect to. And clearly, the Minister of Agriculture is exciting a lot of attention to himself. Please allow him the courtesies that the other members had this morning.
So, Mr. Speaker, as I was saying, that in 2014, when we left government, the industry was producing 216,352 metric tons. It moved from 216,352 metric tons in 2014 to 92,256 metric tons in 2019. Mr. Speaker, in 2016, or 2015, Mr. Speaker, Skeldon Estate produced 39,157 metric tons. Mr. Speaker, in 2016, Skeldon Estate produces 31,782 metric tons. They went to the parliament. The former member then, the AFC leader, Honorable Chapman, boasted that they have turned around the industry and sugar will prosper. Mr. Speaker, in 2017, production fell to 14,000 tons, and that was the end of Skeldon Estate, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in 2016, Upton AFC abandoned 4 sugar estates, put 7,000 sugar workers on the breadline when they were enjoying 100% increase. The same time they took their salary increase, they dismissed 7,000 sugar workers. Mr. Speaker, today we have employed approximately 1,500 of those workers, and I want to inform the APNUAFC that later on this year, the second crop of this year, Rosal, one of the estates that they closed, choose to suffer that the area, will be reopened and smoke will be coming out of that chimney. Mr. Speaker, that's the problem in the sugar industry. Mr. Ranjatan said he wants to right-size the sugar industry. The Guyanese people has right-sized this country and put them over there for the rest of their life. Mr. Speaker, the Guyanese people has right-sized the country and put them over there. And Mr. Ramjatan will be there for the rest of his political career. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and then they came and talked about the rice industry. How dishonest these people are.
Honorable Minister, 2 things. Withdraw that and continue to refer to the honorable member opposite as honorable or comrade.
As advised, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the honorable member over there came to this house with misinformation, talking about the rice industry. Mr. Speaker, I have here with me Kaichur News. Kaichur News, October the 5th, 2015, when they went into government. You know what I said? And this was the president, no less a person than the president, His Excellency, David Arthur Granger. Hear what he said. He said that my information is that farmers sell their paddy to the millers, and the millers produce rice.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Go ahead, honorable member. What's your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, according to the standing orders 41-7, no speakers shall use the president's name. The president's name shall not be used to influence the assembly.
Yes. Okay. I don't recognize that as a point. Or he's quoting, as I allowed the previous speaker to do, quoting extensively from President Ali's address to the UN. Go ahead, Honorable Member, Mr. Mustafa.
Mr. Speaker, you know, when you come to this honorable house, must come with facts. Don't come with baseless accusation. And I'll go to the young man, the honorable member who spoke just before Honorable Bishop just now. Mr. Speaker, and I'm quoting here, and I will leave this with the National Assembly. Mr. Speaker, it says here, my information is that farmers sell their paddy to the miller, and the miller produce rice, which they try to sell to the market. So it's a private business. Up New AFC now are coming to share crocodile tears and say how we run down the rice industry. How we will run down the rice industry when they increase DNI and land rental by 6,000%. They increase DNI and land rental charges from $3,500 to $15,000. Mr. Speaker, they talk about rice problem. They lost the Venezuela, one of the most lucrative markets that we had. They lost it. The farmers were suffering. The farmers who was exporting rice to Panama, they left them on their own to fend for themselves. Now, Honorable Member AG and Nandalal and myself, we are trying to recoup the money that they left the farmers with. Mr. Speaker, I can go on and on what they did. Mr. Speaker, they talk about spoiled fertilizer. Let me tell you something. When we took government in 2020, and we went to the bond at Nari, there were 16,000 bags of fertilizer that were spoiled under the AP and UAFC. 16,000, and the CEO is here. The CEO of Nari is here, and he can testify to that. Thousands of bottles of chemicals that they purchased with taxpayers' money were in the bond spoil. Those are the fertilizer that probably the honorable member is referring to. Mr. Speaker, again, Mr. Speaker, we heard misinformation, baseless accusation. And when you come to this honorable house, you must come with facts. That is why I'm quoting the facts. I am bringing document to show that these are the facts. Mr. Speaker, the honorable member left. Probably he can listen to the facts. These are the facts. He quoted just now and said that the mid-year report showed a decline in livestock, showed a decline in other crops, and a number of other areas. Mr. Speaker, let us for one moment say that, forget about the mid-year's report. Let us look at the full-year report that the Minister of Finance published. Let us look at the budget that showed that the agriculture sector grew by 9% in 2022. But that was not the fact. This year, you had other crop increased by 27.7% in the half-year report. This year, you have the livestock here increased by 4.2% in the half-year report. So I don't know what the honorable member was quoting. He just call names, call numbers, and say, you go and prove it. Well, I am proving it, Mr. Speaker. This is a deception. This is a deception that the honorable members of the opposition has been displaying to the Guyanese people. You all remember when they lost the election, they still say that they won the election. They want the people to believe that they won the election. That's a figment of their imagination. Mr. Speaker, and I can go on, the half-year's report. And then the member went to some other place and take out some pictures and say that the abattoir there, they started it in 2020. Mr. Speaker, the abattoir is an IDB project, and the contract was signed in November 2022. The 3rd of November 2022, look the contract document here. I think this member should be taken in front of the Committee of Privilege because he's misleading. He misleading this National Assembly.
You're going great, Honorable Minister, so don't use words which will destroy your presentation.
Mr. Speaker, as I am saying these are the misinformation that they are bringing to the National Assembly. These are the misinformation that they come to feel that Guyanese will believe them. For example, the Honorable Member Cox, said that he doesn't believe about the report that agriculture in Region 1 has improved. Well, probably the Honorable Member is not living in Region 1, or he is isolated from the population of Region 1. Mr. Speaker, these are pictures that I brought with me where we have turmeric, we have nutmeg, we have, as a matter of fact, Region 1 have been declared the area where all our spices will be produced. And we'll have export going from Region 1 to Trinidad and Tobago and the Eastern Caribbean countries. Mr. Speaker, we have seen the IDB report, what they said about the agriculture sector, and I can quote it. It says that agriculture export has increased 31% in 2022 to the Caribbean countries and North America. The IDB report said that. It's there on my desk, and I can give the National Assembly a copy of that.
Yes, Honorable Member. And so far, all the persons who promised, only Honorable Manikchand and Indar have provided their documents.
Mr. Speaker, Region 1 cocoa production. Look here, cocoa production in Region 1. Mr. Speaker, nutmeg production. Nutmeg production. Mr. Speaker, here we have a ginger processing plant at Hosororo in Region 1. So I don't know when the member come here if they're not going around listening to the people. Mr. Speaker, and then again, well, my colleague is informed me about the Black Giant. Well, the Black Giant has been a success in this country, not only in hinterland, but across this country. We have improved that and increased production of Black Giant bird, so much so that our egg production are coming back to normal in this country. That's the commitment and investment from this government. So, Mr. Speaker, when we come to this house here, we must come with facts. We must come with facts that are important. And as I said, that this year we will increase a number of production. Rice will increase. We will see rice. 170,000 hectares of rice will be planted this year. And Mr. Speaker, as I said, that we have seen that rice have increased by 8% from 2021. And this here is a sector that is capable of bringing in large revenue. That is why we have seen increased markets in 2022. Rice, we have seen an 8.3% increase, and we plan to increase land for cultivation, farm to market road. We have introduced higher yielding varieties. For example, the GRDB 16, we were able to improve and increase yield from 39 bags per acre to between 55 to 60 bags per acre. We have improved crop husbandry management, improved drainage and irrigation, although in the afternoon time they bought 12 undersized pumps with fire engine. Minister Nandalal and myself are trying to rectify that problem. We are still talking to the contractor in India to get this matter resolved, because every single time we have heavy rainfall, the pumps cannot pump the water out of the system. Mr. Speaker, as I said, we heard the mockery about drying floors. Drying floors are important for the development of the rice industry in Guyana. Drying floors are important. We know for a fact when we were young, paddy used to dry on the road, and still in some part of the country, paddies are being drying on the road. 47, you know that. Now we are building drying floors to ensure that we have the conflict between motorists and farmers reduced, the danger reduced. And that is why we every year we have been building drying floors across this country so these facilities can be made available to the farmers. Mr. Speaker, in 2020, the largest rice growing area in this country, Region 5, the MMA scheme. In 2021, the first crop, and the first time we went into government after 2020, we planted 100,000 acres of rice in that area. And Mr. Speaker, we had the flood, the most devastating floods in the history of our country, where all the 10 regions were affected. But we persevered. And this crop we will rebound and plant another 80,000 acres in that scheme. Region 6 will be planting almost 75,000 acres in that scheme. Region 6 will be planting almost 75,000 acres. And I'm hoping by the end, because by the end of this month, the sowing period will expire, we will cultivate approximately 200,000 acres of rice. That is why Dr. Ashley Singh in his report mentioned that rice will grow by 29.3% in this year. Mr. Speaker, in the infrastructure, we have revolutionized the infrastructure in this country. We have changed the landscape in this country. Over the last 2 years, Mr. Speaker, a number of critical D&I work we have executed. As a matter of fact, in 2021, we have built 12 new pump stations. In this year, we will continue that trend. We will build another 8. And Mr. Speaker, you know what? We will not end up like what APNU did. Go to India to test pump. The pumps will come to Guyana and test on site so that we can have suitable pump for the country's drainage and irrigation. And Mr. Speaker, also this year what we will be doing, we will be looking at large infrastructure to drain our area. For example, when the Hope Light Canal was built, we heard it was a Jack Dale's white elephant. Well, the Jack Dale's white elephant saved Georgetown and saved the East Coast during the flood of 2021. And this year we'll start the construction of 3 Hope Light canals in regions 3, 5, and 6. Mr. Speaker, and those are the progress that we're talking about. We'll do a number of farm-to-market roads at Anvawak, West Coast Barbies, Maikoni, Albion Chesney, Takama Savannah, 40 kilometer of road we did in a virgin savanna. Today, that savanna, you could drive 100 miles per hour on those roads to go there where the corn and soya are being planted. Mr. Speaker, we did a farm-to-market road at number 58, where almost 50,000 acres of new land will become under cultivation in the near future. And that will continue. And in 2023, we'll have a number of rehabilitation of roads on the Meaning in the Essecubo, and those are farming areas. We are modernizing the infrastructure, because if CARICOM have to achieve the 25 by 25% in 2025, then we, Guyana, have to play that leading role, and that is what His Excellency Dr. Mohamed R. Irfan Ali is driving to achieve that goal. Mr. Speaker, as I said, the non-traditional crops, the non-traditional sector will be the driver for our non-oil economy. We have been creating the supporting environment for its development. During the last regime, little was done in this crop here, in this area here, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in 2022, we cultivated and we produced 463 tons of soybeans from the Takama Savannah. And you could remember in this budget speech of 2022, my honorable colleague highlighted that we will start the cultivation of corn and soy. We started it, and it's a reality today. We have completed 40 kilometers, I said, of road in that savanna. We have expended almost $1.2 billion to commence the foundation of silo and storage facility. Mr. Speaker, we have installed, we will be constructing a wharf in the Takama Borbis River so that we can transport the commodities out and take in other inputs, agriculture input. Mr. Speaker, by the end of 2023, we will cultivate 9,000 acres of soybean by the end of this year, with projection for 26,000 acres by the end of 2024. and 30,000 acres by the end of 2025. By that time, Guyana will be self-sufficient. Guyana will produce all the corn and soya that is needed for the livestock industry, and we will save $60 million in savings. Mr. Speaker, and you have to look at the linkages, because when you produce the livestock feed, we are seeing an improvement in the livestock industry. We are already self-sufficient in poultry needs. We want to be a net exporter. And we will continue to do that because we have a number of investors that are coming to Guyana and that want to invest with locals. We have brought in new breeds of animals, 64 new breeding bulls from Texas that we are working with farmers to develop the genetics in the beef industry. We are building this abattoir there. We have to certify the beef industry. We will be importing. We already have 437 black belly sheep. We will have received the remaining amount to take us to 1,000 so that we can create that black belly brand in Guyana to replace the New Zealand and Australian lamb that are coming in this part of the world. Those are the development, Mr. Speaker, that we're talking about. Well, APNU just, they didn't have a plan. As a matter of fact, I saw, and in the same thing, in the same report here, one of the farmers was saying, right, that here he said, farmers protest countrywide and nobody came out and talked to us at the Ministry of Agriculture. Then we got to hear that the minister gone on 21 days leave. The man worked 2 months and got 3 weeks leave. The farmers were saying that. That was the kind of performance from...
Honorable member, you will need to seek my leave to conclude. So should Honorable member, Mr. Shearer.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to ask that my honorable colleague be given time to conclude his presentation.
Thank you, Minister Teixeira. Honorable Minister, you have 5 minutes to conclude your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, we will continue. We will continue this because we recognize the importance of the agriculture sector. Although we have the oil and gas sector that is bringing large chunk of revenue into our country, we recognize that food security is important. And we will continue to invest in this sector. And we will diversify it. We start the high-value crop for young people because we have seen that there need to be an injection of young people in the agriculture sector because we have seen the population are mature. So, Mr. Speaker, that will continue the high-value crop. We started broccoli, cauliflower, lettuce, carrot. Now that program is making a lot of money for the young people. Over 100 young graduates have been engaged in that program. But unlike the APNU AFC, the opposition leader was the advice on youth empowerment, and the APNU AFC, what they did, they told the young people to produce cook-up rice, pepper sauce, and plantain chips with no help. No help. We have the president. We have our president who took his interest to ensure that he formed this group. And Mr. Speaker, one other project I want to mention before we conclude, and that is the cut flower project, the fresh rose project that we did. And that is making a big difference, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, a number of single parents, especially mothers, are involved in this project. And annually, they will earn almost $20 million. We have already started it. Every week, we are producing 400 roses. And by the end of February, we will produce 800 roses. These are some of the roses, Mr. Speaker. Very beautiful. Very beautiful. And we, in a very short time from now, we will produce all the roses that are needed in Guyana. You know what happened? A foreign rose is being sold at $2,000 to $2,500, and we are selling a rose for $500. So a person will save $2,000. That's the way we put in disposable income in one's pocket. Well, Mr. Speaker, this budget is a budget that encompasses development for every single sector, every area, and every group. And Mr. Speaker, what I have said just now are the facts. What my colleagues have been saying over the last 2.5 years are the facts. And what my colleagues will be saying in the next 2.5 days will be the facts. And Mr. Speaker, that is something called the facts. Indisputable, like something as simple as in Guyana, there is rain and sun. Yet, there are people who will dispute that, saying we have other seasons. While we tempted to excuse an ordinary person for ignoring the facts, it's worrying when elected officials do that. Just in 2020, Mr. Speaker, the world, not just Guyana, saw the deliberate attempts by the opposition when they were in government to deny the will of the Guyanese people, to steal a country and to steal an election. To deliberately ignore the fact that they lost member of this noble house who took an oath to uphold the Constitution, but did everything they could to transgress it. Recall what happened following the successful passage of the no confidence motion. The Constitution was clear. That's the fact, Mr. Speaker, but yet what is mandated was glaringly ignored for all to see, embarrassing our country in the process. If you can deny something that is so enshrined in our Constitution, deny the fact that they lost the 2020 elections, and even up to now denying the fact that they desperately attempted to steal those elections. If they can
But I allow one stealing to pass. I won't allow this one. This expunge.
All right, Mr. Speaker, I replace it by rigging. Mr. Speaker, it is not surprising, therefore, that they continue to deny the fact that Budget 2023 is continuing the unprecedented rapid transformational and visionary development agenda by the PPP civic government to improve the lives of all Guyanese, including the honorable member on the other side. Mr. Speaker, it is sad. It's a gross disservice to the people of this country that some elected official in this House would come here to deny the fact. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Honorable members, this is a good time to take the suspension for 1 hour.